OKRs before backlogs. Video 3 in the Succeeding with OKRs in Agile series. When you adopt OKRs in an Agile environment, you have a decision you need to make. You need to decide how the OKRs compare with the backlog. You need to decide whether the backlog or OKRs are driving your work. You need to make this decision really early on, day one in fact. Of course you can change the decision later. At the end of the quarter, when you've finished your first set of OKRs, you can come back and review this decision and you may decide to change your approach. But get clear in your own mind and clear with the team as to the priorities of backlogs and OKRs against each other. Basically, you've got three options. Option 1, OKRs and the backlog. So you're working as an Agile team, you have this backlog is feeding into your sprints. Are the OKRs in addition to the backlog? This is option 1. You've already got a backlog, you're already working like this, and now you add OKRs to your backlog. Now you potentially have two conflicting sources of work. If you look at the OKRs, they say do one thing, and you look at your backlog and you look at the highest priority item in the backlog. What if they're not the same thing? Which do you choose? The OKRs may be leading you down one path, but your backlog is pointing you in a different direction. So you've potentially got a whole series of conflicts going on here. Basically what you've done is you've increased the amount of work in progress for a team. You've got two sources of work, and this is going to increase your work in progress. In Agile, we traditionally try and limit work in progress. If you use OKRs in addition to the backlog, you're going to increase your work in progress. Perhaps your team will work harder. Perhaps they can find an additional 8 hours to add to the 8 they already work, and they can work on the OKRs for 8 hours and the backlog for 8 hours. Again, this is not traditionally how Agile teams work. Agile teams aim for a sustainable pace. If you've got a list of OKRs and you've got a backlog, you're going to have a constant series of prioritization decisions. Prioritize from the OKRs or prioritize from the backlog. Product owner's life is going to become harder. They're constantly making that call. As a result of increase in work in progress, as a result of regular prioritization calls, your predictability is going to suffer. And partly as a result of predictability suffering, your messaging within the team and outside the team to managers and to other stakeholders is going to suffer. How do people know what to expect? How do you communicate a message of what they should expect? So I do not recommend option 1. Option 2, you give the backlog priority. You put the backlog before OKRs. Your backlog is still the main source of your work. You come along and you craft OKRs every quarter to deliver some section of the backlog. You can think of this as reverse engineering your OKRs. Here's the work we're going to do because it comes from the backlog. Here's our plan of backlog work. Now, how can we put OKRs around that? Can we find themes in the backlog? Effectively, your strategy is still do the backlog. Nothing's changed there. You've still got a backlog. You're still trying to do as much of the backlog or all the backlog. Your OKR is just adding an extra layer on top of this. I would question whether this is really ambitious. One of the themes in OKRs is about getting teams to be more ambitious. Aim high. You aim high. If you miss, you may still have done more than if you'd aimed low. More importantly, I would argue that you're just duplicating work. If your OKRs are little more than a wrapper, a set of headings under which the backlog items fall, then all you're really doing is duplicating the work that you've done anyway. You've decided what you're going to do from the backlog, so OKRs are just finessing it. I don't see what adding OKRs is going to add. If anything, it's going to take it away because you're doing additional work. Option 3, and for me, this is the logical conclusion of the way OKRs should be working, and this is the way it fits in best with Agile. Option 3 is you put the OKRs before the backlog. The backlog takes a back seat So you set the OKRs, put the backlog to one side, set the OKRs, look at what your customers, your stakeholders, everyone else is asking of you. Asking what you're trying to achieve, what is the purpose of the team. And then use the OKRs as a story generator. Instead of going to the backlog and fishing for stories, you look at the OKRs and you say, what do we need to do to move forward on these OKRs? And OKRs have priority already. And OKRs represent your strategy, so you're not duplicating work. So, if you want, in the extreme, throw your product backlog away. And let me say that I'm primarily here talking about the product backlog, because the product backlog is a long list of things that your team may do. Your sprint backlog, on the other hand, is typically reloaded every 2 weeks. You probably want to keep using a sprint backlog, unless of course you're doing Kanban, in which case things are slightly different, but many of these ideas still fit. So throw your product backlog away, set your OKRs. Let the OKRs drive all your work. See the OKRs as a story generator. Every time you reach the question, what shall we work on next? What shall we schedule in the next sprint? Go to your OKRs, review your OKRs and ask yourselves, what do we need to do to move forward on the OKRs? The OKRs have a prioritized list. To move forward on the items you haven't done, what do you need to do? What is the highest priority? What can you do? What are the options available in the time you have available? And if you need to, write a story. If you can quickly find a story in the backlog that describes the work that you need to do to move forward on the OKRs, then by all means take it from your backlog and get on and do it. But if the story doesn't exist, or the story takes a few minutes to find, you might as well write another story. So what if it's duplicate from the backlog? That's not important. It's about moving forward on your OKRs. You can always delete a duplicate later on. Don't worry about it. Write a story, deliver a story, and then you can ask yourselves, did we move forward on our OKRs? Did the work we've just done advance the delivery of those OKRs? Does it enhance the customer value, the business value, the thing we are delivering? And so the cycle repeats. Our OKRs drive all our work. What shall we do? What do we need to move forward? What stories do we need? Did we move forward? What should we do next? You keep on going around. The OKRs are in the driving seat. There's no conflict between backlog and OKRs, because OKRs are always the most important thing to do. So the key message here is put the OKRs before the backlog. Let OKRs drive all the work. The product backlog takes a back seat. You can even dispense with it if you like. I hope you found that useful. I'm making some more videos, so please subscribe to the channel and of course buy the book.